Democrats have held control of the Senate for the rest of President Biden's first term, retaining an expectation-defying majority that includes a flipped Pennsylvania Senate seat. But wait, there's more. If Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock wins his runoff election on December 6th, Democrats will expand their majority by one seat, an historic midterm upset. Joining me now is Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Mr. Chairman, congratulations. Welcome back to the Sunday Show.
Great to be with you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on.
So let me first get your reaction to Senator Catherine Cortez Masto's win in Nevada.
Well, I'm ecstatic. I mean, she was she's an amazing senator, amazing candidate, just so proud of how she just fought so hard in a tough election and emerged victorious. She is now our majority maker. But as you mentioned, we're not done. You know, my number one goal as the chair of the DSCC is to bring every incumbent back. And we have a chance to do that with Raphael Warnock, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that he gets reelected as well.
Well, I was just about to ask you about that, because there might be some Democrats out there who think that, wow, now with Senator Cortez Masto's victory in Nevada, well, we've got the Democrats have the majority, so we don't have to focus on Georgia. What are the stakes? Does her victory in Nevada lower the stakes in the runoff in Georgia?
No, not at all. The stakes are still high, particularly for the people in the state of Georgia. The people in the state of Georgia are now going to have, once again, a very clear choice as to who do they want to represent them in the United States Senate, who has the qualifications, who has the character to represent the people of the state of Georgia. And I think folks agree there's a very wide gulf and contrast between the two candidates. We've got Herschel Walker that even Republicans say is a deeply flawed candidate. And I don't think the people of Georgia want to have a deeply flawed candidate representing them in the United States Senate. So a lot is at stake. We are going to aggressively work with Senator Warnock to make sure that he comes back and is reelected. And I believe the people of Georgia will also make sure that their voice is heard very loud and clear during this upcoming runoff.
So on Tuesday, former President Donald Trump is set to make an announcement. The expectation is he is announcing a run for president in 2024. As the chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, do you welcome his entry into the presidential race before the Georgia runoff? And do you think that will have any impact on Senator Warnock's chances?
Well, certainly, I don't ever welcome former President Trump running again. I think he's terrible for the country. I think the American people have spoken very loudly as well that it's time to move on from him. He did a horrible job as president and has divided this country. And as a country, we need to come together and be united. And that's why I think this race in Georgia is so important. Certainly in Raphael Warnock, we have someone who is about uniting people, about coming together. He talks about the work that he has done in the Senate with Republicans in our caucus to get meaningful things done for the people of Georgia, from the port facilities to the military facilities there, to helping everyday folks deal with the cost of rising prescription drugs. He has made meaningful accomplishments in that area, of capping, for example, the insulin cost for seniors. Raphael Warnock was a principal leader in that in the caucus. Folks in Georgia want to make sure that they are returning someone who has a proven track record of not only leading, but bringing people together to get things done, which is why we have to win. We have to keep doing what we have been doing to get to this point. We have to have an aggressive ground game, which is critically important. That's what we do at the DSCC. In fact, for the first time, we invested more in ground operations in this election than we did in our independent expenditures, which is our TV and media. We were completely focused on that. We need the resources to do that. That's why our defendthesenate.org website is so important for folks to help us get the ground game. If you go to defendthesenate.org, it helps us have the ground game, which is even more important in a runoff election where you normally see a drop off of votes. We're going to have to be very aggressive. But Senator Warnock clearly is the superior candidate. Now it's our job is to make sure that voters get to the polls and make their voice heard.
We have less than a minute left, but I have to ask you about this since you are the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. How relieved are you that the midterm elections went off without a hitch or the violence we all feared would happen?
Well, we're very relieved at that. Certainly there were concerns and was expressed by the Department of Homeland Security as well. And I think this is an appropriate time to just make sure that we recognize those election workers who volunteered their time to get out there and work the polls to make sure that this American democracy can continue to function and can continue to be a leader in the world of how we conduct our elections as free and fair. And the workers who knew that there could be some issues still showed up to work the polls because they believe in this country, and we should thank each and every one of them for their patriotism.